Application HK Food Group 1030 LLC doing business as Waypoint. Michael Scelfo, manager, has applied for a new all-alcoholic beverages as a restaurant license at 1030 Mass Ave with proposed hours of operation from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Friday and 10:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, and a proposed seating capacity of 145. Applicant is also applying for an entertainment license to include audio tape machine, CD, computerized digital media, to be played below, at, or above conversation level, and 2 TVs. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is James Rafferty. I'm an attorney with the offices of Adams and Rafferty, located at 675 Mass Avenue, Cambridge. Appearing this evening on behalf of the applicant, HK Food Group 1030 LLC. They'll be doing business as Beverages. Seated to my right is Michael Scelfo, S-C-E-L-F-O. Mr. Scelfo is one of the managers and members of the LLC. He will also serve as the manager of the license. Mr. Scelfo's right is Brian Lesser, L-E-S-S-E-R. He is also a principal with the LLC. Both Mr. Scelfo and Mr. Lesser, I'm sure, are familiar to the Commission. Mr. Scelfo is Mr. Lesser operate a Harvard Square restaurant known as Alden and Hollow. Mr. Scelfo has a long culinary history in Cambridge. He was the chef at the time of the opening of the Russell House Tavern in Harvard Square, where he achieved great acclaim. He searched for his own location, and he took over, or was applied for a transfer of the Casablanca license, the long-standing Harvard Square establishment, where he opened Alden and Harlow. Alden Harlow has been open for about 18 months. It has proven to be extremely popular, one of the most well-received new restaurants in Boston over the past few years. Mr. Scelfo himself is a luminary in the culinary world, a competitor and finalist in the James Beard competitions, known for his innovative cuisine, his attention to locally sourced products. And in the 18 months that Mr. Scelfo and Mr. Lesser have been operating Alden Hollow, they have demonstrated, I would suggest, the ability to operate at the highest standards of Cambridge licensing, both in terms of the manner in which they operate their restaurant. There have been no negative impacts nor complaints against this establishment. Given the popularity of Alden Hollow and the ability demonstrated by Mr. Scelfo to meet local and regional food needs, they began considering a second location. What's proposed at this location at 1030 Mass Ave is what would be considered a sister restaurant to Alden Hollow. And I leave it to Mr. Scelfo and Mr. Lesser to go into the details of exactly what that means. But it's been described to me as similar to Alden Hollow with more of a seafood orientation. We have filed a menu. I do want to share with the Commission, in case members haven't had an opportunity to visit Alden Hollow. There are some photographs there showing the high level of finishes and the food products that are currently served and made available there. This location at 1030 Mass Ave occupies ground floor, a portion of the ground floor, what has been a range of retail spaces. Many years ago, you may recall, it was a small grocery store. I think most recently might have been some kind of an art store. I imagine there are others in the room who have a better command of the history of the retail uses, but it has not served previously as a restaurant. It is primarily an office building. There are no residential units in the building. It is on a stretch of Mass Ave, almost opposite where Ellery Street comes into Mass Ave. There's a new bicycle store across on the diagonal corner, and I believe the Harvard University Police and the Domino's Pizza occupy the ground floor of an office building across the street. So it's just outside of Harvard Square, and it is a location that has been vacant for a Lesser and Mr. Scelfo felt that it really would lend itself nicely to a restaurant of the caliber they talked about. Its floor plan, which we've submitted, shows one of the dominant features of its architecture, which is a large curved window facing onto Mass Ave. And you can see that that prominence is employed critically in the design of the restaurant. There are a couple of issues that we've become aware of from some residents about the impact of the restaurant. I thought it might be of some benefit to the board, the commission, and others to understand how the building itself would work. The building contains a below-grade, at-grade parking garage, which is accessed at the end of the building closest to Harvard Square. In the diagram I provided, you'll see that the corner of it's at the opposite end of the building where the restaurant will be located. So, it's also true that the space that will be occupied by the restaurant, it's the right-hand corner. It does not run the full length of the building. There's actually another tenant that occupies the back portion of the building. So it's practically the front third of the building on Mass Ave. But everything about the operation of the restaurant is oriented towards Massachusetts Avenue. There is a parking garage, and as a condition of the lease, the operators have access to 15 parking spaces, which satisfies the zoning requirement in this business B1 district. Restaurant uses, as I'm sure the commission knows, are allowed uses in this district. The requirement is that there be one parking space for every 15 seats. They have access to 15, and that number has the ability to increase on nights and weekends because the parking demand in the garage is inverse for the restaurant to the office operation. As you can imagine, evenings and weekends, the office parking demand is quite low. The applicants intend to seek a valet license from the traffic department to operate a valet stand to allow patrons to leave their car and have it placed into the garage direct. That's an advantage that few buildings on this stretch of Mass Ave have, which is a garage there. Similarly, all of the delivery operations will be occurring interior to the building. The same garage entry that the passenger vehicles use also provides access to a loading zone, a loading dock, which is below grade, go into the garage and go below. That loading dock will, during the day, receive food deliveries. All of the trash is stored in the loading dock area. It will be picked up within the loading dock, internal to the building. There is no exterior dumpsters. There are no exterior storage of food or waste products. Everything is contained within the building. So one of the appeals of the location was its minimum impacts on surrounding uses. And it is it's a location that can be served entirely within the building. And again, with its orientation towards Mass Avenue, there's little anticipated impact on the residential neighbors in the rear. The application does include an entertainment license for 2 televisions, and I've seen some communication about concerns expressed about the televisions. Mr. Scelfo tells me that they have 2 televisions today at Alden and Hollow, and that's they are, for most all of the time, they are covered. They are not used, and on the rare occasion when they are used, such as the Academy Awards or perhaps the Kentucky Derby, there is no sound on. It's a restaurant that when the televisions are on do not have any sound. So the suggestion that noise from the entertainment here coming from the televisions could possibly impact residents on Green Street, I think there isn't a factual basis to support such a concern. There is no other form of entertainment, certainly no live entertainment. It is a restaurant. It will very much function as a restaurant. The demand of Alden and Hollow is proven to be so strong that nearly all of the restaurant diners require reservations. So patrons don't gather outside very often. It's not anticipated here, and Mr. Scelfo can speak to this, but they do little, particularly on the weekends, of diners arriving without reservations because they simply cannot accommodate them. And we anticipate a similar popularity here. At this point, I thought Mr. Scelfo could answer any questions you might have, share with you his background and experience. He will be the principal person running the restaurant. It's his talents in the kitchen that will continue the tradition that he's established at Alvin Harlow at this location. Maybe you want to just introduce yourself and tell the commission a little bit about the location. The application, just to conclude, does request a Section 12 license for the location. As I said, restaurant use is an allowed use here. I certainly understand neighbors' concerns about the impact a liquor license can have on a particular venue, but we're here to impress upon the commission, based upon the experience that the commission has already had with Alvin and Harlow. This is a restaurant with dining as the principal activity. And frankly, if you're not there to have dinner, you're probably not particularly welcome as a guest. That's just what the focus of the entire operation is.
Thanks. Thank you all for seeing us tonight. I think, I don't know how much I could add to what Jim just said, but we are a restaurant first and foremost, so Alvin and Harlow. We pride ourselves on our food. We like to think of ourselves at that location in Harvard Square as, in terms of the concept, is an extension of a family's table, my family's table. So we have a very kind of diverse clientele, as are most of the people that reside in Harvard Square. We get everyone from professors to students to alumni to people visiting from the suburbs, to foodies from all over the city who come to visit us. And as Jim said, it's first and foremost because of the food. Jim was also correct in stating that the TVs that we have in the restaurant are covered. We've used them twice in 18 months, again, with no sound. So we really are first and foremost about the food. Our bar is sales, and I think Brian could confirm this, is, our bar sales are actually dominated by, it's really considered a dining bar. We consider it a dining bar. We refer to it as such in the restaurant. And we really are there to feature the food and kind of, lend ourselves to the community, the Harvard Square community in a positive way, which is something we've been really active with Alvin and Harlow, even more so than when I was with the Russell House. We've gone to great lengths to kind of integrate ourselves in a positive way in the community there and just serve as a positive influence on the neighborhood. And I think we're just looking to continue that tradition down the road, kind of anchor the other end of the square. And kind of carry on the tradition. There's I think lots of opportunities for us to pursue projects in different locations. We really love Harvard Square. I personally love Harvard Square, and I would like to think of it as home. So for me, it made the most sense to kind of stay home and do something in the square. So if you have any questions about the concept, I'd be happy to answer them for you specifically, but I think Jim pretty much said it pretty well.
So my questions are more related to the space itself. So if I'm standing in front of the building, you're looking at the left side, correct?
Correct.
So does that space reach all the way back to the Green Street side, or where does it stop at?
It does not. I'm sorry. That's the map I provided. The corner of the building demonstrates the footprint of the space. I mean, where you see that line there.
Okay.
If you're facing the left side of the building and that curvature is in front of you,
Yes.
we descend back approximately a third to halfway back the building, and then there's a tenant directly behind us that abuts the Green Street side of the building. If that makes sense.
So looking at the back of the building, and even the side of the building, there are windows there. Are those windows going to be uncovered? I'm concerned about the light. I know that was some of the concerns that some of the neighbors have raised.
We don't have any windows on the back side of the building at all.
What about on the side part
On
of the
the
building?
side part of the building towards the front, the curvature portion will
Yes.
be open, and those will open up onto Massachusetts Ave. But there's nothing on the side of the building that would be open that would emanate light out.
Madam Chair, if you look at the floor plan, you can see the windows are depicted. There aren't windows where the Chief's pen is now. They start at the curve as it comes around Mass Ave.
Okay.
And those are the only windows.
Okay.
So there's no windows on the left side from the curvature all the way back to the.
There are windows along where your pen is there, but that particular area where you're looking at is the kitchen. So the kitchen equipment and line is on that side. The intent was not to black out those windows, but there's no fixture lighting or guest dining oriented lighting. The only light that would come out of it will be an exhaust above that, which is where our kitchen line will be. And every I think 6 feet on a line, there's one bulb that descends down on the line to illuminate the equipment below. So there won't be any,
So do you know roughly from the end of the curvature, roughly?
I could point it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, roughly here, how many windows
I think
exist?
it's two full. They're about, they're 4 by 8 panes, I would say. There's about 2 of those.
So is it 1, 2, 3 possibly?
Yeah, 3. The third one in the back closest to you is where the dish area is, and that's blacked out.
Okay.
The prior retail use had, frankly, more openings and light in that area.
And we don't use any fluorescent lighting or anything like that. We actually are we've been to Albany and Harlow, it's very dimly lit. We use the old Edison style bulbs to light the restaurant, so it's quite dark. There's actually more light coming in from the neighbors at Hammond than there is actually in our own restaurant.
We did become aware recently, Madam Chair, of some concerns around the building, and we've asked building management to provide us with a summary. Those are 4 separate sheets, one for you, this is one. And these are all an attempt to address what we understand are some historic issues around equipment, air handling equipment in the building. What's of note in that communication is that this operation will not be affected by that, and they are not going to be tied into that particular portion of the system. If you see in the last paragraph, the author states the HVAC equipment serving the Waypoint space is independent from the base building equipment serving the tenants above. None of the Waypoint equipment will be tied into the system serving the upstairs tenants. In our opinion, the load generated from your restaurant will not negatively impact the operation of existing base building equipment.
So what would be on the back side of the restaurant? So if I'm looking through, I know that there's a wall there. What's on the back side as it relates to
That butts up
facing
against
toward
the
Green
other
Street?
tenant.
Yes.
Prep kitchen area, some walk-in refrigerator.
Excuse me, are you Madam Chair, is that question about what is the space beyond their space or within their space?
So if I'm looking from Mass Avenue, as I did this morning, I look through the glass and I see a back wall. What's behind that wall? Is that your space as well?
The back wall of the building?
No, the back wall of the actual.
That's some other tenant.
That's another tenant.
And do you know what is that, an office tenant? Do you know how that's?
We have a building up here.
Well, apparently there's someone from the building here this evening that might be able to
Okay.
give us more specifics about that layout of that first floor. Should I ask that first one?
Not yet. Thank you.
So in your kitchen area, you're gonna have frylators and.
On the left wall there where your pen was pointing out, there will be, yes,
So where is your exhaust hose going?
above that.
Above that, and it discharging to the left side of the building?
It discharges into a pollution control unit which is housed within the space and then ties into an existing fresh air intake meter that's already on the side of the building. So there's nothing actually being placed on the exterior of the building. It all happens within the infrastructure of the building.
Pollution control scrubber unit.
Yeah.
And that's all gonna be behind the wall, so to speak, so it doesn't change the facade at all in terms of what it looks like in the exterior.
There's nothing that will be protruding. It's not going to be there.
No penetrations into that facade.
So it says in the letter that you provided, the HVAC equipment serving the space is going to be independent from the base building equipment. So is this a new HVAC unit that's going in, or?
These are heat pumps in the space, so it runs off the building condenser units. So they have a chilled water line.
That again might be one we want to
Yeah.
defer though. I
Okay.
think this, because I think that sounds right, but we probably should.
Any questions yet for that?
So have you investigated purchasing a liquor license as opposed to applying for an all-new liquor license?
We have, we looked, the licenses, that we knew from my, engagement with, license holders that were available.
Mm-hmm.
And of the few that I was aware of, I don't believe, I made some inquiries in, the Western Front license,
Mhm.
which is inactive. I happen to represent the licensee.
Mhm.
He has executed a contract to sell that license. That
Mhm.
license is not available.
Mhm.
The Prospect Lounge license,
Mhm.
which I also happen to have a history representing that licensee, informed me that they are contemplating a return to another location. And I was not encouraged by their
Mhm.
response.
Mhm.
And Mr. Holland's long-standing license has been transferred,
Mhm.
and frankly, I wasn't aware of any other license.
Mhm.
I made inquiry at the license commission as well.
So is your client able to satisfy the requirements for establishing a liquor license, the criteria?
Right, well, we believe so, that
Mhm.
the public need will be addressed, that we will not have an adverse impact upon,
Mhm.
areas. We're here tonight to introduce that. We, learned recently of the concern, frankly, I talked
Mhm.
to a number of, larger, area groups and, didn't learn of any,
Mhm.
but, within the past few days, I've learned of a particular concern on Green Street,
Mhm.
and we're happy to meet with those people.
Mhm.
I've reviewed some of the, communications expressing understandable concern about impacts, and I think, an exchange of, information might be helpful.
Mhm.
Time didn't allow us to do that before the hearing,
Mhm.
but would certainly welcome the opportunity to do so at a later point in time.
And the need, I mean, how are you establishing the need?
I think the need is a reflection of, the demand being experienced in Alden and Hollow, and
Mhm.
the desire for restaurants in this, stretch of Mass Ave. There aren't a lot of full-service
Mhm.
restaurants. It's a building, that has a number of, daytime occupants, and it's also, in the evening, well-served by the existing multifamily buildings in the area. So,
Mhm.
we feel strongly that the need does exist both for the restaurant, and to provide alcohol. A restaurant of this caliber, frankly, can't,
Mhm.
succeed without alcohol,
Right.
and, that's what led to this application, but it's,
And demonstrate a willing support?
I think at the moment we're, understand there are some people here to speak in favor, and,
Mhm.
we do not, solicit, signatures per se.
Mhm.
We made it aware of patrons in Alden Hollow, were made known, and
Mhm.
it's our understanding that, many of them, have expressed support and, possibly in attendance this evening, willing to express a desire, those who live, in the area.
Can you make that threshold, do you think? Just for the few people that'll be here tonight?
I would suspect that, candidly, given, the concerns that I've heard about
Mhm.
within the last 48 hours,
Mhm.
I advised my clients that I suspected that, it would be unlikely in my experience that a final determination would be made this evening
Mhm.
until we had an opportunity to at least, address some of the concerns that I've recently become aware of.
Well said, Madam Chair.
So if there is someone from the building who would like to speak, if you could please come forward. Good evening.
Evening.
Please have a seat.
My name's Tom Kuborin.
Can you
Tom,
spell
you
your
have to
first and
spell-
last name, please?
My last name is CONGORGORAN.
G-U-R?
And I'm the property manager at 1030 Mass Ave. And I recently started there back in November of 2013, so I've been there for slightly over a year now.
So perhaps you can address for us the issue with the HVAC
Yeah.
system.
So first of all, he was right. All the air is going to be heating and cooling is going to be provided through split systems. The heat pumps.
If you can speak up, I can see the people in the back are unable to hear.
They're heat pumps, they're split systems, and they'll all be interior to
Yeah,
the
would you
space.
please?
You know, you're gonna have to sit here because there's a fan in this stenographer coming here.
Thanks. Maybe we should invite some of the people who have concerns up, because I don't think they can.
So if you could just keep your voice up, and if
Yeah.
the people in the back, if you can't hear, please indicate, please.
So, as I was saying, the heating and cooling is going to be provided through heat pumps that are interior to the restaurant itself. There's nothing that's going to be added on the roof from a base building standpoint for this new tenant. So as far as any concerns about new noise dealing from any sort of base building concerns, nothing that is going to be added is going to tie in that's going to add any sort of noise to the space. In regards to their space, there was concern about their location in the building. So they're located at the front. Behind them, in between them, is 2 layers of gypsum wall that actually goes from the ceiling to the floor, which will keep out any sort of noise, even from going into the next space, let alone permeating through the back wall and onto the neighbor as well.
Did you do that because of the fire rating, double 5/8?
Yep. That's been there.
And maybe you know a little more about, so the scrubber and the hood system are gonna vent the outside to the left of the building, correct?
Correct. As far as the exact specifications of the hood scrubber, I'm not too familiar with that.
And you don't have any other exhaust system put into the kitchen facility in that building now?
No.
That issue, Mr. Lesser is quite familiar with, if you want to further question, with the particular scrubber, but as to the overall building, ordinance.
Is this section of the building been segmented off as far as the fire alarm goes to represent the alarm just for that section of the
It
building
will.
in the zone?
It will.
Okay.
When the tenant build out takes place, they'll have their own system.
And at the end of the day, is this gonna require a sprinkler retrofit to certain sections based upon?
Outside the space,
Oh, in this space?
in the space, yeah, there will have to be some.
So if I'm standing in the back of the building, earlier, there's a house right there on Green Street. This space, though, does not come back to the back part of Green Street, is that correct?
Not at all. So, I think one thing to point out too is that some of the noise concerns that have been brought up tonight are from base building equipment that sits on top of the roof that again won't be affected by the restaurant, and also just that the new noise level on the 1030 Mass Ave side is actually a lot higher than the back of the building on Green Street. Just something to point out.
So in terms of the existing noise levels that the residents are hearing, are you doing anything about that to mitigate that at all?
Yeah, we've done a lot. So it started probably back in 2012. Our company invested about over $200,000 in sound attenuation on the roof because we had gone and met with a lot of the neighbors in the community and they had discussed they did have an issue with it. So we went forward and installed some sound attenuation around some of the base building systems on the roof, including the chiller, which usually creates the most noise.
Right.
Um,
I think it's been
And-
up this.
Take
Okay.
it.
Could you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, so we invested over $200,000 back in 2012 in sound attenuation on the roof around some of the mechanical systems that are the most noisy. And since then, there's been a lot of the complaints that have been generated lately, I think, are actually from other construction going on, not necessarily our building. But again, one more point too is just that the concerns that are coming in, just in our opinion and from the research that we've done with our consultants in the past, the concerns that are coming about noise, regardless of whether a tenant like this moved in or didn't move in, wouldn't have any positive or negative effect on the space itself because of its location and because of the way that it's going to be heated and cooled.
So is there additional work that you're planning to further reduce the sound that's coming from the roof, or you're satisfied with where it is now?
No. So we've met with Andrea, who is part of the Cambridge City License Commission, and you can feel free to reach out to her. We've walked through with her many times. We've walked through and had meetings with the community as well, and we are completely compliant with the city of Cambridge.
So as far as egress goes, there's the one egress off the restaurant space, the rest is through the common lobby area.
Say it again?
Egress from the restaurant space, there's one that directly leaves the street. Any others, are there others that go?
There's one other that'll be into the lobby,
Okay.
the main lobby, but again, that'll go out the side of the garage or out the front door.
But there's a secondary one that gets the lobby space to get to the outside of the building.
And where will the trash disposal be? Would that be downstairs in the parking deck, or?
Yeah, I mean, Tom can speak to this, there is a loading dock down below where the dumpster is. It's a self-contained unit that's picked up within the building and then taken out, contained, covered from the building itself, so it never actually leaves the building. So it's like separates on the truck.
Yeah, and in preparation for the new restaurant coming in, we've actually contracted with a new waste removal company that's local to Cambridge, does a lot of work in Cambridge, and they figured out a new logistics system where everything as far as trash and removal will be taken care of completely inside the garage.
You know what size dumpsters these are? These roll-arounds?
Yeah, right now we have 2 yarders, so they're not that big. The building isn't that big itself.
Right.
So the way we've been going to try and make sure that all the trash is picked up inside the building is we keep smaller 2 yarders. That way the trucks that come in the building to pick up all the trash, first of all, can fit into the garage, and we don't have to leave it outside.
And the smaller trucks actually can get into the garage.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to open it up for public comment and let you hear some of the concerns by the neighbors, and then perhaps give you an opportunity to come back to the table and talk about some of them. So are there members of the public, if you can just give me a show of hands, members of the public that wish to be heard on this? So I'm going to go row by row, and I will start with you. If you could please come forward, and then we can work our way down and go to each aisle, please.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Marilyn Wellens, W-E-L-L-O-N-S.
Sorry, one more time.
W-E-L.
Your first name?
First, Marilyn, like Monroe, M-A-R-I-L-Y-N. Wellens, W-E-L-L-O-N-S. My address is 651 Green. And so, I'm a butter, and I have quite a bit to say, so I beg your indulgence. So, it's difficult to know where to begin. We've had, as Mr. Congaran has relayed, problems with the building since its conversion to lab use in the beginning in 2010. And so contrary to Mr. Rafferty's statement that this is an office building, it is in fact lab use. So it is 24/7 use over weekends, during blizzards, day and night. every day of the week. And the HVAC system, as Mr. Converin also said, has been brought at great expense into compliance with the Cambridge Noise Ordinance. But I have to point out that even though I have a handheld gizmo that measures noise levels, I am not always able to get up at 2:30 in the morning when the noise is bothering me and go to the property line to take the measurement. Sometimes I take measurements from the back porch at that or other hours, and it's usually just at the border, low to 50, low to 50, so that the existing system is in compliance so far as I can tell, except on occasions when I do notice that it's noisier. And I've reported those to your inspector, but I've sort of slacked off lately because when you've had sleep interrupted as often and as frequently over 4 years as I have, going on 5, you tend to want to stay in bed. I believe you have, as a matter of record, an email from Professor Joe Solit of the Harvard Medical School talking about the health effects of disturbed sleep. And I think I can fairly say that I and other people who are abutters to the building itself are suffering the effects of disturbed and interrupted sleep. So while I appreciate what the owners of the building have done to bring the current use into compliance with the noise ordinance, I point out in addition that the city's noise ordinance is inadequate because pure tones that violate the standards in the spectrum are not counted. And consistently, the buildings had pure tones. When this all started, I talked to an acoustical consultant around who knows the industry and chose not to be quoted by name because he works in the industry. And he said, if you can sing it or hum it, it's illegal. It's a pure tone. We get pure tones and ringing tones and thrums from the building all the time. And so that's the existing situation for the HVAC system. I'd like to point out that it's relatively good news, I guess, that the back windows that were formerly used by Barsamian's space are not going to be, not proposed to be used by this restaurant. But unfortunately, the loading dock and the garage all face and abut Green Street. So you find that all of us are nevertheless affected by plans for deliveries, removal, cleaning, power washing, for example, all of these things, we can hear them. We hear the dumpster. Our bedroom, my bedroom, is on the same level as the dumpster. We can hear it. We hear the power wash. We hear everything in that building. And I'd point out that the state law, while you have a request for a 1 a.m. closing, contrary to many other places that are satisfied with 11 p.m., the state law says that the licensee may be on the premises at any time after 1 a.m. and before 8 a.m. for cleaning or what are the other various other activities that make noise. So all of this, rubbish disposal, deliveries, we hear and we will hear because the vents are directly back on a level with our bedrooms. On traffic, I will say that it is very good to hear that there are 15 spaces proposed and that is compliant with the rules. But our experience is that for activities on Mass Ave and in Harvard Square, people park on Green Street. And most recently, we've had problems with people blocking our driveways. And of course, we've had previous experience with a restaurant called Chi-Chi's with people coming down to get their cars at night or even pedestrians on Mass Ave. You can hear noise from Mass Ave on Green Street. We abutters are essentially the first line of residential buildings, and we, in a sense, are protecting the residential character of the rest of our neighborhood. So I'll leave that and move on to other problems. One of our neighbors is a restaurant consultant, and his name is John Vynanek. He couldn't be here tonight.
John Vynanek?
Yes, Vyhnanek. And he has He's noticed smells, for example, from Dumpling House coming down to his end of Green Street. We can smell the fumes from the Indian restaurant. I happen to like Indian food, so I know when they're starting their curries, but we can smell them. So I did have a question, and I will wait for an answer because I'd like to continue this. I understand that the scrubber vents outside to the left of the building. I'm not clear how this is supposed to work, because of course if you're looking straight at the building, is it to the left as you face it or the left as we face it? And in any case, is this a vent to the exterior of the building? And another problem as I see it is that there's a question about why is the applicant so far ahead of himself, in that I believe construction has already begun. Now, you can get a construction license, a permit, for interior work, and it is not properly posted.
No work
There
has
is-
begun.
You framed up the interior where the kitchen is. There are 2 construction permits in the walls improperly.
It's not this space, no.
It is this space.
We don't have a signed construction contract with them.
Well, I have photographs of the construction permits in the window, improperly posted, facing into the space. You can see it from the front door looking in and across. And should I offer this to you? This was taken this evening, just before coming here. Here's and then this is what you can see from the outside. This is down the hill. It's not actually on a public way. It's posted inside. I hope you're passing this on to us. So,
It's the adjoining space, it's
no,
not
I'm
this.
sorry.
The man runs the building.
You can take a look through the front door of your
There's a
space.
spin studio adjacent to us that's under construction. I think she's referring to that.
So if I'm facing the building, standing
Fine.
right in front
Yeah.
facing the building, because I
It would be best
understand
to
it,
direct this to because
you're going to the left
Conrad.
side. To the right side is where,
Right
like
side.
by design,
Used to be.
used to be.
Yeah, it's in Big Rail. That's
Right. What's going in that
that's
space?
a handlebar. That's a spinning studio. It's
Okay.
pretty self-contained.
currently, that's the window you're being shown, an adjoining space. It is not the space of the licensed
May I
premises.
see your drawing, please? Your drawing.
You mean the floor plan?
All right, how many windows do you have?
The picture that you're showing now?
You want this
Is
on?
pictures
I'm gonna give you maybe 10 seconds just to go through, just so she's clear about where the space
Maybe
is.
you could help. Yeah, 'cause you don't know where this issue is. Well, why don't we let Sean seem to know where the problem is?
Stand here and you look
What you
here,
found out about.
and you're looking at that window.
I'm sorry?
And there are 2
Did you tell the
construction
rest of
permits
us what you
facing
learned?
in.
There is, okay.
Chair,
So there's
I can,
a
Chair,
construction.
I
Wait, just to finish
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
saying,
We're
excuse
gonna have a
me,
quick
There's
discussion.
construction.
So one,
excuse
I
me,
can
talk,
answer
just one
just if you
second.
can give me 1 second, I need one person to speak at a time. I need to make sure the stenographer can get it on record, so I can't have all of the side conversations. So if you could please just answer the question in terms as it relates to where the space is.
Yeah, so her question was about looking in the front door window through the space.
Yes.
And what she's seeing inside is a desk that houses where the construction contractors sit to do their office work.
Okay.
That's all. So they just sit in the vacant
It's
space.
a table that's there.
It's a table.
The photograph, I hope you can go look. The photograph is of construction permits facing in space designated for the restaurant.
I went today, I didn't see it.
No.
So I saw a table and chairs.
You
Madam
have
Chair,
to-
let's be
you have
clear
to
for the
looking
record, if I
for it
may.
Specifically.
Yes, Council.
Both the applicant and the building manager says there is no construction work occurring in the premises. There has been no permit applied for. No work has commenced. I don't know what the witness is speaking to, but I want to make clear that the people with first-hand knowledge of the building are saying emphatically that there is no construction activity occurring within the proposed premises.
And again, I looked through the glass today and I saw no work. That's why I wanted to make sure I was looking at the right space. So if I'm being mindful that there are a lot of other people to speak, so if I can give you one more minute to please wrap up your comments.
Let's see. I would point out that, given the noise from the loading dock, the deliveries will be different for a restaurant than they were for the grocery store. They will be more frequent, and they will, they could possibly be by big truck, but of course I am not an expert on that. And we are concerned, as I said, about the smells. I'm glad to hear that you propose to have a scrubber or may even have one. But again, I'm concerned about the venting. And I think that's it, but I'm sure it won't be. I would like also to point out that the applicant has not asked for only 2 TVs, but also for CD and tape systems below, at, or above conversational level, and that we hear noise on Mass Ave, from Mass Ave. And again, I'd emphasize that this building is not an office building. It is a lab building. It is a semi-industrial use right now. And therefore, I wonder about the parking that's supposed to be freed up in the evenings. Thank you.
Thank you.
And remember, the existing grade is different on Green Street from on Mass Ave.
Would you like your picture back?
I would like to submit them. And if you would be kind enough to put today's date.
Pictures of detail in space, that should be noted.
In any case, they are not pointing out wherever the construction is in the structure. They're not publicly visible.
Thank you. May I have the next person who would like to speak?
Just state your name for the record, Miss Sarah. Thanks. My last name is Sarot. My first name is Ellin. My name is Ellen Sarot, but I'm 2 people tonight. I would like to read into the record someone who asked to be represented here. Her name is Wellens, again, Wellons, and her first name is Clara, Clara.
And if you could speak up as you read it, just so the people
Yes.
are back in here, please.
My name is Clara Wellens. I live at 651 Green Street. There is a hearing tonight regarding granting a liquor and entertainment license to 1030 Mass Ave. 1030 Mass Ave already has challenges meeting the noise requirements of abutters. Until they are able to resolve this issue, I cannot see myself supporting granting them this license. Cambridge is developing at a rapid rate, and I understand the desire to expand. This does not seem to be an appropriate place for that development, however. Please include this email in the public record. Pass it up to the chef. I lived on Green Street from 1987 until my landlady died unexpectedly in 2013 and I was forced to move. I still live in Cambridge. The store that was called a little grocery was Barsamian's. That's the same space as the restaurant wants to occupy. In the midst of all the furniture stores, we were grateful to have a food store, but there were problems with Barsamian. There was traffic day and night. There were the food garbage and stuff. I won't go into all of that, but I just want to say I did live on Green Street, were very aware that there was a big food business there. Barsamians fed working people in the whole area. They would come get their lunches, and it was a busy place. So I like that correction made. Its virtue was it was a food store. As to noise, I can't imagine TVs with no sound. You're going to have music there. You're going to have people who say, I can't hear it, could you please turn that up? If you have alcohol, you draw people to drink. Yes, they will also eat, but you will have young people, you will have noisy people. I have a question about the space. Will the restaurant plan to expand to on-street dining tables in fine weather? I don't know. There are going to be deliveries by day, there's going to be garbage pickup. The noise on Mass Avenue in front of the restaurant will be a problem, particularly in not snowy weather, because they'll have to smoke outside. That is a lot of people and a lot of noise. When Oberon opened in Harvard Square, I was surprised by everybody standing outside smoking. The streets are filthy around there. There are a lot of restaurants already on Mass Avenue in that area. I don't see the need for a new one. And I can tell you about parking. Parking is a mess on Main Street, partly because of the people who live in the building where I live. I gather, with no proof, that the landlord rents each apartment separate rooms in the apartment. Everybody on 3 floors, that can be 9 tenants, has a car. And there's space for 2 cars in the back of that building. So everybody goes to Green Street, and it's been a very big difficulty. Thank you. Thank you for answered about the expansion to tables on the street in fine weather. I think the Russell House had some outdoor eating area.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could we get an address on the speaker?
I lived at 654.
No, I understand, no, it's just, they maintain a record and,
So you used to live at Green Street, correct?
I did, for 27 and a half years. I lived at 654 Green Street. And I'm still close to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Next speaker? And can I just get a show of hands of how many other people want to speak on this application? Okay. Thank you.
My name is Dina Feldstein, Brody.
Spell your whole full name.
Yep, D-E-N-A, Feldstein, F as in Frank, B-L-D-S-T-E-I-N, Brody, B-R-O-D-Y. I live at 661 Green Street. I'm a direct abutter. First, I just want to thank the people who have come from the building and from the proposed restaurant, and say thank you.
And if
we
you could
also-
speak up, I'm getting hand motions, I can't hear you.
I'm not a loud speaker, I'll do my best. I appreciate the comments and explanations, and I appreciate the talents of the chef, regardless of this. The rear of the loading dock has a vent that faces the back of my house, and I'll just echo Marilyn's concerns. The back of the building is above grade, so the vent is above grade, and I am concerned about noise and smell. I won't repeat what Marilyn said about loading dock, you can hear it, etc. I've got a question about where, if the HVAC system is going to be separate from the one on the roof, where will it vent? It's got to vent somewhere. I'll echo the concern about noise, that there's no guarantee that the TVs will stay off, and they would be allowed CDs and other digital media. There will be, I gather, a bar, and even if it's a dining bar, you will not be required to eat if you sit at the bar. And I'll echo what Marilyn said about, because we used to enjoy the back of our house in the summer, and although I understand that the building has done the best it could, and brought the noise down to the compliance level. It's still really at the edge and is just a constant penetrating, irritating noise. I am concerned that despite the best efforts, there'll be additional garbage and vermin coming from the restaurant. There will be additional late night pedestrian and auto traffic on Green Street that will make parking more congested. I won't keep repeating the things that Marilyn wrote. I will echo that I support what she said. I do have a letter from neighbors who cannot be there. They are right beside me at 663.
One more time. They are.
The neighbors who are right beside me at 663 Green Street, they could not be here tonight. They are Susan and Arthur Holcomb. I'll just read part of it and submit it, if that's okay.
Yes.
We cannot attend, blah, blah. There are three main concerns. The first is that this application is not being considered within an overall framework of planning for the city of Cambridge. Both Central Square and Harvard Square are vibrant centers for dining and recreation. It makes planning sense to have hubs of entertainment and dining in any city. There are negative consequences to residential areas if these hubs evolve into ubiquitous strands of dining and entertainment facilities that increasingly impinge on residential neighborhoods. Second, the proposed HK Food Group restaurant and bar will bring additional traffic, demand for parking, noise from music and air conditioning, littering, potential for bourbon, and smells from cooking to a neighborhood that is largely residential. Third, while the city of Cambridge may set standards for such a new establishment, there remains the concern as to whether the city will be able to monitor and enforce standards with respect to these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And will you leave the letter?
Absolutely.
I'm very loud, can I stay here?
No, you still have to come up front, but we appreciate the loudness.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening.
Carol Monica, M-O-N-I-C-A.
M-O-N-I-C-A.
Like
Carol, you're
from
from
Santa, right.
Spell it.
Monica, Carol Monica.
Okay, but if it's C-A-R-O-L, yes.
Can you spell your last name again, please?
M-O-N-I-C-A.
And where do you live?
643 Green. Right at the back. And, you know, I do want to say that this is a city and we choose to live in a city, so we, oh, sorry, I said I was loud. We live in a city and I understand that, but that building has been an assault on our senses since the day it started. However, I only want to say that at Barsamian's, the most problem was the generator for their refrigeration, which was a 24-hour-a-day thing that went on, this huge sound, and I wonder where your generator is going to go to the refrigeration in your building, because it came right through the vents in the garage, right into our backyards. You cannot sit in your backyard. And what I decided is that if I ever want to sell my house, I'm going to have to show it between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, because it would be impossible at any other time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person that wishes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Harriet Feinberg, H-A-R-R-I-E-T, F-E-I-N-B-E-R-G. I live at 639/641 Green Street. I own that house. I've been living in the house since 1966, and I have owned it since the 1980s, so I've seen many, many changes in the neighborhood. I would like to point out to the restaurateur and his supporters that we are not in Harvard Square at this location. You said you wanted to have another restaurant in Harvard Square. Indeed, that is the whole point. We are not Harvard Square. Harvard Square is a great location for this type of restaurant. Central Square would be, Inman Square would be, We are on the edge between a residential neighborhood that goes Green, Franklin, Kennard, and on into Cambridgeport. And we are the cutting edge protecting the residential area from the encroachment of Mass Ave, which tends to encroach both from the Central Square and the Harvard Square area. And at some point, now and then, we need to take a stand, and I think this is one of the points where we do. I don't want to repeat everything everybody said. We know that the building, although they've tried to comply, has been very difficult for all of us. I also live right behind it. And since we've had such difficulties with compliance with that building, it does not feel so good to me that we're going to be sure that we're going to get everything that's promised by the restaurant in terms of not having noise, not having this, not having that. As a person very involved in music, I'm also very concerned that music carries far. And if the music in that restaurant is anything like the music that I have encountered going into some other places in Cambridge where I just want to run out the door right away, the volume being such that you cannot even carry on a conversation, not only is that music going to be audible through the front, people going in and out, they can't just lock the front doors, but in fact the vibrations can travel through the ground. And I dread the thought that I would feel vroom, 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 while sitting in my house, which is directly behind. I also want to point out that there is a passageway between 1030, where this restaurant would be located, and 1010, the adjoining building, so that there's no sound protection from Mass Ave. And I live right next to that passageway, so that the sound from the street of people leaving and coming into the restaurant at 10:30, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night is going to come right through that corridor. My bedroom is in the back of the house, and even if the restaurant itself was well insulated, they can't do anything about people going out on the street. When I heard this project and about the 2 televisions, I know you say you're not going to do it, but I picture what happens when they have sporting events on TV in restaurants, and everyone is cheering for the team, and then they go out in the street. Let's hope we never have that happening in our neighborhood. So I would say I have a combination of fears and concerns about many things about this proposal, and we just heard about it less than 2 weeks ago when we got the abutters notice. My feeling is that we have not had enough time even to inform the people on the adjoining streets, on Franklin Street and on the other side of Green Street, about what's going to happen, and that I would hope that the decision could be postponed until at least we can make more inroads of people in the neighborhood knowing that this is going to happen. I would have preferred that we had these discussions before this meeting tonight, but the gentleman here said they were going to have discussion with the neighbors, and I think that's great, but I think the discussions ought to occur before a final decision about this license is made. I don't know what the time frame would be, but certainly I think we need a little more time to see what it is they're promising and what is going to happen. And I'm ending with a sort of compliment that we keep hearing that this restaurant in Harvard Square is so popular. People are just crazy to have a second restaurant and then it's going to be packed. Well, that isn't good news for us in the neighborhood if the restaurant is going to be packed and there are going to be people standing outside wanting to come in and leaving at 12, 12:30 at night, not being able to get enough food and staying until the very last person is ejected. That's great for the restaurant, but it's not so good for the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir?
So, my name's Phil Wellens, W-H-I-L, Wellens, you've got a bunch of
God,
names.
spell it again.
Yeah, okay.
W-E.
W-L-O-N-S, it's gotta be the same as the others. So, I'm struck by how, in a sense, the process before this meeting has wasted your time. And I'm sorry about that. When you worked with the management of 1030 back in 2012 and forward. We met them again and again, and we met with city officials who were involved with them, and we talked about the neighborhood's concerns. And the management, in my opinion, did what it needed to do to comply with the law. I don't think the law was strict enough, but it did what it needed to do, and that was really important. The problem is that I think the neighborhood's been caught flat-footed by having to come here to learn about the layout of the restaurant. We had no idea when we came here that whether it would use the whole, what we think of as the Barsamian space, or whether it would be protected. Whether there would be a series of other users, some other user between us and the restaurant. We had no idea about the venting or possible venting. We knew nothing about what was going on in the loading docks. We knew none of that. And so you can imagine how people can start to think about what's going on. We would have benefited enormously, I now understand, if we had had the chance to talk with you folks and to find out what you're actually planning to do and find out why a lot of the things we're worried about may not be relevant. You've all heard it. I was sitting in the back seat, back here. I couldn't get a picture of what the building would look like during the discussion. I heard some of the discussion, I didn't hear at all. So my request is to pick up on what Harriet said. Instead of deciding this today, give these folks a chance to talk with the neighborhood. Let the neighborhood find out what's going on. There will probably be some concerns, but they're not going to be everything you've heard this evening, I can be sure of that. And then let's see what the issues actually are. And they may not be major, or they may be, but at least we'll be talking about the same footprint, the same activity. So I would like to second Harriet's request, and I think actually said that I think you were talking about having a conversation with the
thank you.
neighborhood.
We would welcome the opportunity to do so, and I've got good addresses and names now, so we got the beginnings of a good invitation list of maybe hosting a meeting in the space, not to advocate, but to provide information and let people ask questions. And I agree, it would have been an advantage to have done that in advance of the hearing. I agree, and I take responsibility for not being able to identify the right venue to have that. I did some outreach. Frankly, I couldn't find exactly what neighborhood association, but now that I have actual names.
You have names. So that's my contribution.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to be heard in this matter? Seeing none. Where's your partner at? I lost him in the crowd. You can come right back. Up. Or do you want to speak, ma'am? So, you've heard a lot of concerns.
We have, and as noted by several of the speakers, including Mr. Wellens and Ms. Feinberg, we would welcome, and frankly, knowing the decisions and standards faced by the Commission and applications of this nature, we would ask that the matter be continued to allow us an opportunity to exchange information, thinking that it might be beneficial to walk the site, walk the space, understand. I mean, there's a long history with many people in this building, independent of this restaurant, it sounds like. And I think we, frankly, didn't have a complete command of that history, and we've learned more about it in the last few days. And I would ask the Commission to allow the applicant at least an opportunity to address that before any final decisions are made.
Questions?
No questions.
So I'd like to make a motion that we continue this matter until council's had an opportunity, along with the applicant, to meet the concerns of the neighbors. And I will leave it to council to contact us as to when to put you back on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank
for your
you.
time.